interest. Was you can't do financial maths or finance growth and decay without knowing what interest is. Okay, just as a simple definition, you can write somewhere in your book. Interest is the cost of borrowing money. Okay, interest is the cost of borrowing money. Okay, so if you borrow money, you have to pay a cost for borrowing that money. Okay, and that cost is called interest. All right. Now there are two types of interest. The first one is called simple interest, which is the one that I'm going to talk about first. We've got simple interest, and we also have compound interest. Simple interest, and then we have got compound interest. So I'm going to talk about simple interest first. Now, simple interest is just an interest which is charged or calculated on the amount borrowed only or the amount invested only. So if I come to you and say, can you lend me 200 rand? Then you say, okay, it's fine, I'll give you the 200 rand, but you must pay me a 10% interest, which will be 20 rand. So that 20 rand is called simple interest. It is only calculated on the amount that's borrowed, that's it. It is not calculated together on the interest that accumulates. So if the interest is calculated on the amount that has been borrowed, we call that simple interest. Okay. Now, simple interest has got its own formula. There's a general formula which is used to calculate simple interest. And that formula is A equal to P times 1 plus I times N. Okay? Now, you need to know what each of those letters represent. The A represents the future amount or the accumulated amount. That is the amount that was borrowed plus the interest. That's the A. Okay? Then the P is okay, in financial math it's called the principal amount or the initial amount. Okay? Or you can also call it the borrowed amount. Okay? It can also be called the investment amount. Because there are times where a person can invest money and the bank can pay you interest. Do you know that if you put your money in a bank, okay, if you put your money in a bank, the bank is borrowing from you. Do you know that? But if you request money from the bank, like a credit card, a car loan, a home loan, you are borrowing from the bank. So when you deposit money into a bank account, the bank has to pay you interest. It's unfortunate that financial institutions, they probably don't pay people as much as they deserve. But if you've got a very large amount of money, like millions and so on, you can get hundreds of thousands as interest. You know that. Let's say if you put 10 million rand into a bank account, you can get hundreds of thousands or even tens of thousands of rand in interest. Okay? So that amount which is borrowed or which is invested is called the principal amount. Okay? Then I is the interest rate, which is generally written as a decimal. Okay? Now we have got rate, which is represented by the letter R. Okay? But we have got I, which is the interest. Okay? The interest is always converted to a decimal. It is given as a rate, that is as a percentage, which is a rate. Then you have to convert it by dividing by 100, then you get the I. So, just to simplify this, the I is equal to R, which is generally as a percentage divided by 100. Okay? Then the N is the number of years. At this stage, in grade 10, generally, your N is going to be the number of years. Okay? In grade 11, it will change. It will be grade 12. Okay? Because financial math is taught in all three grades in the FET phase. Okay? When you write metric, There is a question on financial maths, usually about 15 marks, about 10% of the paper. But most of the question will be on grade 11 finance and grade 12. A little bit of some grade 10. Okay, so you need to be familiar with that formula. Okay, now I just want you to be aware that this formula is a linear function. So I can simplify this by removing brackets on the right hand side. I can have P plus PIN. Okay, and then here our two variables, that is the independent and the dependent, will be this A here, that's the accumulated amount, and that N there, which is the N, and N, which will be the number of pairs. So the N will be like your X, okay, and the A will be like your Y. So you can draw a graph of simple interest. Well, you can draw a graph based on the formula for calculating simple interest. And it will be a linear function. Okay? Your y-intercept, obviously, is going to be that initial amount or the amount which is borrowed or invested. Okay? So this equation is actually a linear function of the form y dot mx plus c, where the y-intercept is the principal amount, okay, or the amount which was borrowed or invested. The x or the independent variable is going to be n, and the dependent variable will be the accumulated amount. All right, so make sure you're aware of it. Right, let's go to some examples. Right, let's just do a few here, maybe two examples, the rest you can do them. All right, the first question, it says, an amount of 3,500 rand is invested in a savings account. Okay, so this person is saving money. Okay, a savings account, it's a bank account that a person opens in order to save money or to invest. Okay, which pays simple interest at a rate, right, of 7.5% per annum. Per annum means per year. Okay, in grade 10, most of the rates are compounded per annum or annually. Okay, calculate the balance accumulated by the end of 2 years. So we need to know how much money was in that savings account at the end of 2 years. Now, when we are doing calculations, remember we are doing that question, it's always wise to list what you are given in terms of the formula. So for number one, we want to calculate the accumulated amount. The amount which was invested is 3,500 rand. And our interest I, which I told you that it will be equal to the rate divided by 100, 7.5. Okay, so this will be 7.5 divided by 100, that's 0.075. Right? Then our N is going to be 2 years. So when I do the calculation, let me do the calculation. Okay, so I'll write my formula. A equal to P times 1 plus I times N. My P is 3,500, or that's the amount which was borrowed. And my I here, please take notes here for someone might say, how did you get 0.075? Now the I here is 7.5 divided by 100, which gives you 0.075. That's how I got that 0.075. So that would be 0.075 times 2. I'll put times 2 there. Then you put that in your calculator. And someone tell me the answer. The answer must be greater than 3,500. Because the value of A is always greater than the value of P when we have got that simple interest formula. What answer do you get? 4,000 what? No sense. 4,025 rand. Because it's financial math, so sometimes you can have cents, so you have to round off to two decimal places. So the accumulated amount at the end of 2 years is going to be 4,025 rand. Which means at the end of 2 years, the person would have gained interest of about 500 rand, 525 rand. Okay, that's take about 2 years. Okay, so that's the first question. Right, let's do number 3. Now, number 3, I'll do it on the next page. So, number 3 is that one. Let me delete this. Then, but we've got any questions so far? Okay, it's unfortunate that because of COVID last year, we didn't do financial maths in grade 9. But there's no other way out now. Right, number 3. The question says, Sally wanted to calculate the number of years, that is n, number of years she needed to invest 1,000 rand, which is the P, okay, uh, in order to accumulate 2,500. Okay, so she wanted to invest 1,000, and then she was hoping to get 2,500 after a specific number of years. So she wanted to know how many years it would take her to have 2,500 after investing 1,000 rand. She has been offered simple interest, right? Right, that's 8.2% per annum. How many years? So we are calculating N now. How many years will it take for the money to grow to 2,500? So here, our accumulated amount is 2,500. The amount which was invested, that's 1,000 rand. Well, our interest, okay, as a percentage of 0.082. Our n, we don't know. That's the one we need to calculate. So we want to calculate n. Now, for you to be able to calculate n means you probably have to make n the subject in the formula. So, right now, formula first A equals P times 1 plus I times n, which I can write as A equals P plus PIN. Okay. Now, well, can you allow me to make n the subject, then I can substitute after that? Okay? So what I'm going to do in that formula, I'll make n the subject. So to make n the subject, you take p to the left, and you get a minus p equal to p times I times n. Okay? Then for us to be left with n on the right, we divide both sides by p times I. So we divide both sides by p times I. Okay, so I'm going to divide both sides by p times I. So this p and that p cancel, I and I cancel. So your n is going to be a minus p over pi. So I'm going to substitute now. So that's 2,500 minus 1,000 all over the p, which is 1,000 times 0,082. Okay. So if you simplify this, what answer you get? What would be the n equal? Hmm? 18.29. To be 18.29. 18.29. Yes. Okay. Well, in this case, they didn't say, okay, we should not round off our number of years to an integer. Okay, so we'll just leave it as 18. That's 18 years and approximately. Okay, can someone calculate for me 0.29 times 12? 0.29 times 12. 3.48. 3.48. So that will be about 18 years and 3 months. Okay, approximately. So it will take about 8 years and 3 months to accumulate 2,500. This is financial math, so our aim in this case here, we are not told that we should round it off to the nearest integer. Therefore, we will leave our answer to 2 decimal places. Okay? Right, any question there before I move on to compound? Right, I'll give you a moment. Alright, let's move on to compound interest. Alright, compound interest. I'm aware that probably some of you have heard about the word compound interest. Now, compound interest is a type of interest whereby the interest is calculated on the amount that has been borrowed or invested, together with the interest that also accumulated. So it means interest will be calculated what? Twice. In the case of simple interest, the interest is only calculated once. For compound interest, it's calculated 2 times. First, on the amount that was borrowed. Second, on the amount that was borrowed plus the interest that accumulated. So the interest is more like it's calculated 2 times. Therefore, when it comes to compound interest, if you borrow money and you are going to pay the interest as compound interest, you pay more, okay, as compared to if it was simple interest, right? And just to let you know, this is the real type of interest which you see in daily life in most cases, especially for financial institutions. That's how they make their money. Because credit is a big business. Okay? Like example, in this country, it's a big business. Right? Then, but here we have got a parent finishing uh, my best degree. I worked in the bank. Right? So I've got a bit of some banking experience. Now, compound interest, it's a big deal. Okay? Either it can mess you up or it can make you very rich. There are only 2 things. Okay? For financial institutions, it makes them very rich. Because if a person, say for example, you don't have money to buy a car, you go to any of the banks, then you say, okay, I have seen this car, I like it, but I have no money in my pocket. Right? Then the bank will be very happy. They will scrutinize all your financial situation in terms of whether you can afford it, do you have any other credits, are you a good payer of credit and stuff like that. Once they are happy that you can pay back, they will be more than happy to give you the money to buy the car. Because they know that once you are given that vehicle loan, they will make more money. Remember, if you want to buy a car, generally you pay it off over 5 or 6 years. Right? You mustn't think that you are the winner. You are the winner, yes, because you got your vehicle, you move from point A to point B, but the bank is killing it. Okay? So I know that it's not easy to have, say, 500,000 to buy a car, or even 200,000, or even 100,000. It's not easy to have cash and say, I've got this cash, I'm going to pay. It's not easy. Not many people have got that capacity. Right? Therefore, a person will say, okay, I don't have the full amount, but I can manage to pay it over a specific period of time. Right? That's, that's why the bank requests all your documentation so that they can check your record whether you're going to pay or not. Then you can start paying per month, maybe for 60 months, which is 5 years. Right? Or you can pay for 72 months, which is 6. If you don't have money to buy a house, they give you money to pay over 25 years, 20 years, 30 years, depending on your situation. Right? During that period, the bank will be making lots of money because you pay a lot of money. Like, for example, uh, let's say you want to buy a house. Okay, I'll talk about the formula just now. All right, let me introduce the formula first. But let's say you want to buy a house maybe for say 1,500,000. Okay? And the bank will say, okay, we're going to charge you interest maybe 7% per annum, but you are going to pay us, okay, over 20 years. Okay, which means you have to do a calculation to determine what is the total amount that the person is going to pay in full over the 20-year period. That amount is called the accumulated amount. It is going to be quite a lot. Okay, we'll do the calculation in a few minutes time. So, just to summarize, compound interest is calculated on both the amount that was borrowed together with the interest that accumulates. Okay, right? Now, the formula for calculating compound interest, it's an exponential equation. That formula is A equal to P times 1 plus I raised to the power of N. It's an exponential equation. Because it is exponential, that's a sign that the accumulated amount is going to be more. You pay more because we are dealing with an exponential equation there. So A is still the accumulated amount or the amount of the, right, or the future value. P is the principal amount or the initial amount. You can also call it the investment amount. I is the interest, which is written as a decimal, and N is the number of years. As I said earlier, in grade 10, our N is going to be then the number of years. Now, let's do the calculation based on how much a person who borrows 1.5 million, let's say you don't pay a deposit, because it's an advantage to pay a deposit, by the way, when you are borrowing. It's an advantage. It lowers the installment. If you don't pay a deposit, you're going to pay more. Also, I'm not sure whether you have heard this. An advert on TV or on radio where they say, okay, uh, you can borrow something at 0%, at zero deposit, and then you can start paying maybe in 6 months' time or next year. And some people who are, can I say, who are ignorant of finance, they'll think, oh, there's no deposit. Why? I can start paying next year. That's not a good idea. You pay more interest. Okay? If you see your parents getting excited in a study situation, tell them no. No. Because it's paying more interest. It's not entirely true that if you don't start making your payment now or after a month, because generally if you borrow money, you have to start paying after a month. Generally. If you delay, the amount that you borrowed will start to accumulate interest based on this formula. Okay? And this formula, it makes the person who lent you the money rich, and it makes you very poor. You follow what I'm saying? So, let's just do a simple calculation. So, a person borrows 1.5 million to buy a house. Okay? Let's say the interest rate is 7%, 0.07, and the number of years, say 20 years. Okay? You're managed to get your nice house, 1.5 million, but you still have to pay. What's the total amount there? Okay, please take note, this is a 5. Because of my, yeah, that's a 5. How much?
5,804,526.
5,800,000.
804,526 and 69 cents.
How much interest is the person going to pay? The interest is over 3,000, actually over 4,000, which is more than 200% of the amount which was borrowed. And who gets that almost that 4 million is the bank. The bank gets that. It's profit. On top of that, well, remember, the house will only become your house, okay? Take note, it will become your house. When you get the title deed, the bank will hold on to the title deed. But you are the owner of the house. Okay? You can only become the true owner when you pay the last cent. If you haven't paid the last cent, then the house is more like 50-50. You own it, the bank owns it. Okay, the advantage is, okay, well, you need to have a good source of income for you to be able to make such a sacrifice. Okay, so if you don't have the source of income, you have to back off. Okay, otherwise, it can make you very, very poor. Okay, so this is what happened. Now, just imagine if a person wants an even more expensive house, what will happen? Right? So that's one. Now, if we were to do this calculation with simple interest, let's do it with simple interest, but you can see the difference. 1,500,000 times 1 plus I, okay, our I is 0.07 times 20. Can someone do the calculation for us? I just want you to see the difference if it was simple interest.
3,600,000.
3,600,000. There are no sense. Right. So let's say you are a financial institution or someone in business. Which of these two methods would you prefer? You are a business person. The compound. Okay. Was it to make you more wealthy? So this is what happens in real life. Okay. That's why if a person decides to borrow money, you have to think twice first. Do you have the capacity to pay it off? Okay? If something happens along the way that you cannot manage to pay, if it's a house or if it's a car, it can be repossessed. Okay? And people can cry. In 2008, I think you were still very young at that time. There was a financial crisis which took place in America. Okay, then it spread throughout the whole world because the United States has got the largest economy in the world, and their economy is connected to most economies around the world, including South Africa. Okay, because some of the American companies they got investments here and so on. So there was mayhem in the US and throughout the whole world. Okay, there was a financial crash which took place. If you've got an interest, you can go online and read about the financial crisis of 2008. We're still very young at that time, right? Houses were repossessed, right? Even recently with the COVID situation as well, right? Some people were also affected. Because if your source of income was affected, it means that you're paying a bond for your house, you're paying vehicle finance for your car. It means that you're affected. But fortunately, some of the banks they gave people some kind of relief. Okay, they said, okay, come to us, tell us the situation, then we can give you some kind of. But the relief is not genuine relief. Okay? It's just that they are saying, okay, we are going to give you some kind of grace period to fix your financial situation. But during that period, compound interest will be kicking in. Whatever amount, whatever balance you outstanding you a person was owing, that balance outstanding accumulates interest until you start making a payment again. So it's not like the bank will say, okay, you are not going to pay us. No. The bank is just saying, for now, since you are in a financial distress, you can stop making a payment. Okay? When your situation gets better, you can start paying again. But your installment might go up slightly because of delayed payments. All right.